some of the key objections that they will face really in a cloud migration is, one, not being convinced that there's a business case. Oftentimes you might hear, oh, cloud, it's a nice shiny tool, but the executives or others might not be convinced. Why is there a business case to even move to the cloud? Part of that goes with really the lack of executive buy-in, and that's important. So that comes from the CXO suite, but including financial, so CFOs, security is a big thing. So CISOs, obviously, security is utmost priority and for companies, and that's a key area that often needs buy-in when you go through this process. There's a lack of skilled cloud personnel in some cases, as one of the big objections, because you might have a whole team that hasn't been used to or haven't done anything in the cloud, and now we're talking about making this major shift from what was on-prem based systems and more of a legacy way of working to a whole new world of cloud. So first it's thought, hey, we don't have the people or the skills necessarily to go on this journey. So that's a big one. And then distractions. So if you think about this, and it's kind of, some people feel like they're pushing a boulder up a hill in some cases, and when you're distracted with this big mammoth task of moving or migrating to the cloud, you have other priorities, and oftentimes those more tactical priorities might trump some of these priorities, and also you get distracted with other things, and it's hard to get progress on this big situation you're trying to look at when you're having these constant day-to-day distractions in IT. And so these are really some of the key objections that teams might face when trying to migrate. But there's obviously, as we go through more, there's some more to explain how to get past them. A team, really wanted to take this journey on, and it could be a team, could be the entire company. The first and most important thing is to realize that it's a journey, especially in telco. Telco environments are complex. Over time, a lot of telco companies have historically grown over acquisition. So you have hundreds, if not thousands, of systems that have been, through acquisitions, have been scattered across the enterprise. And it's complicated. It's not a small little startup that you could just move something pretty quickly to the cloud, right? It's a complex task. So one, like anything else, it's overwhelming at times, but you have to realize it's a journey. It could take 3, 5, sometimes even 10 years. But the key factor in everything, and kind of what we really pride on, is starting small, make iterative improvements, and get buy-in. So from the executive sponsorship that I mentioned, previously, it's important, it's essential. Throughout the organization, you want to spend some time getting your leadership on board. You want to provide the data, via slide material and so forth to explain it, but it's not just slides. You don't want to just put slides together and present it. You want to also do a pilot, because the best way to really show why the benefits of a cloud are there and why an organization or team should migrate is take an example. Try to get a pilot use case and show the before, the after, show the benefits you realized by going there, right? And those benefits don't just come from a technical migration. So with cloud, we talk about there's what we call mode 2, mode 1, mode 1.5, mode 2 is kind of a term that we've been using. And it's not just the technical piece. So sometimes you can argue some of the technical challenges are the easiest. The hardest challenges in the cloud migration, and what you really want to show the benefits on is the ways of working and adopting the change to a cloud native mindset. So this really, cloud really enables agile methodologies. It helps enable DevSecOps practices. It allows you to do everything in code. So that means your release plans in code, your infrastructure as code, your application as code, your pipelines in code, everything, your landing zone in code, every single thing that you have is in code. And when it's in code, following like a GitOps perspective, everything is versioned. So there's a sense of, immutability with what you do, and also the way the teams work around these new processes. It's a significant change. And by showing that and showing the benefit, with small autonomous teams, and how you can embrace innovation and fail fast. It allows you to break down those silos. And the days where you used to have to take 6 months to get a VM created or even get infrastructure brought into the data center, you're doing it in a matter of minutes, clicking a button, automating it, hitting an API, spinning it up. Think of how that changes the organization, and showing that, not just on slides, but showing it in a pilot, really is an eye-opener to showing how the world can be different by adopting cloud technologies, how the culture can be different, and how the processes can be different by adopting a cloud native mentality and architecture. For who needs to be involved at what stage of the project, really, it's easy to say everyone, but the important is, while you're doing in the beginning, while you're looking at your strategy, while you're going through a pilot, it is important to include everyone. When I say everyone, you want to include folks at different parts of the journey in a traditional life cycle. You want to look at the impact and opportunities that the cloud migration can do to the entire organization. So when you get into cost is a thing. You want to ensure that you know how to handle costs. That is important to show cost models, projections over time. You want to bring your finance team in. But the key part is you want to bring all these teams in along the way, because you don't want to go through a pilot and you don't want to then just drop this thing at the end and show how the benefit of cloud is there and all this stuff. You want them to feel it, and you want them to live it. So as you're going through this process, bring them along. You might not bring your CFO along on the day-to-day scrum, but you'll bring representatives. You'll report up through the organization. You'll explain what's going on. You'll show cost dashboards. You'll show how over time, cost projections are there, how you can auto scale for demand, but how you can quickly turn it down overnight when demand's low and things like that. Your business is hugely important. So, obviously the business, you want to drive innovation, you want to drive user experience, you want a quicker time to market, failing fast. You want to show to the business, hey, look, how quickly I can, spin up infrastructure, how quickly I can push my code and automate from dev to prod deployment through automated testing, through really approval flows, or straight to prod, depending on how your organization, how aggressive you want to take CI/CD. But showing that and driving that innovation, the business gets really excited, because the business wants to move fast. They want to be innovative. They want to have a really solid user experience. But also, like anything else, the best way to do all that is you need to be able to fail fast. And that's a key part of what cloud infrastructure enables you to do, right? IT, so IT, traditional, we're talking resiliency, high availability, elasticity, security, data retention. There's all things like that from an IT perspective, they typically deal with often. So you want to show how you can handle resiliency, high availability, how you can go multi-region, availability zones, multi-cloud even, and show how you can really achieve DR and HA and all the perspectives of a traditional 99.999% uptime that a lot of critical systems are bound to. So you want to bring your IT partners along the way to have them see it and see the difference of how that relates in a cloud world versus a traditional on-prem legacy world. HR, a lot of people don't think of HR. So HR, you want to look at talent acquisition, right? So you're adopting new technologies, you're adopting new skills, new ways of working. You want to look at, continuing to hire, top talent in that area, but you also don't want to just ignore your existing workforce and, not look at upskilling. So there's a huge thing of your employees know, obviously, the environment, and they've been with you along the way. You want to look at upskilling them. The best way to adopt and to gain the skill in the cloud is to have your employees go through some training and upskilling. So you want to look at different programs or processes of how we can take our staff and get them comfortable and up to speed on some of the latest technology or cloud principles. And then retention. So cloud is a very hot market. It's competitive. as everyone knows, all the cloud vendors and all the companies moving, retention is important. So, it's important to look at not only how do you give people more skills and how do you help the organization grow and adopt cloud, but the retention of these individuals is key. You're investing a lot of time and money in your people. You want them to be happy, you want them to be excited, and you want to retain them. So HR is a key component of this. And there are ways that just the excitement of moving to the cloud and being able to remove some of the barriers of the old world is a very exciting thing to folks that, goes a long way in retention. Internal communications and employees. So that whole, what I talked about before is really like ensuring the buy-in and the awareness. So like I mentioned before, you're not going to have your CFO in the scrum, but what's very important is for communication and awareness of along the way of how the process is going. You want to show roadmaps, you want to show projections, you want to show what you're guiding, what your North Star is or where you're trying to go. So you continuously get buy-in across all of these folks. So that's a lot of times that might be via your, director of communications or your internal communications chain. So your intranet, sometimes you might publish info on there and letting the rest of the organization know what's happening. So there's different ways you want to make sure that you get this information out to the rest of the employees. They might not be involved in the day-to-day of the early part of the migration, but it's exciting to see that it's happening and the company's, adopting this and moving towards this type of, moving towards to the cloud. So, and the CXO I mentioned a little before, but from the executive sponsorship, this is where, again, if they're involved from the beginning, even from a strategic perspective, and then as you go through the different phases, the best way to gain alignment is to communicate early and often to your executive suite. So, and don't be afraid to communicate with blockers. Don't be afraid to raise different issues that is important for everyone to understand. You'll hit challenges and barriers of like, how do we change our financial model of how we even charge, right? The monthly billing, or do we do, reserved instances over, a year time or so forth? It's a different way to bill. There's going to be some friction in doing that. So having a two-way conversation with those teams to understand what you're doing in this, if it's at the beginning in the pilot, but as you go along the way, that is extremely important for the executives to get buy-in, because if they don't have the buy-in from the executives, you're constantly trying to push the boulder up the hill, right? You need to have buy-in, at least from the start, and over time, the buy-in will get easier and easier as you're showcasing the benefits of moving to the cloud. So then, really adopting cloud in its entirety, it affects the entire organization, like I mentioned, and it really needs to be sponsored that way. So, having that leading coalition, as we say, or a team that can really help with all these stakeholders and communicate this is extremely important. So you're not just doing something in a silo. You're not just trying to achieve something for your team. You might be starting with your team, but you're really trying to achieve it for the entire organization. And you really want to spread the benefits and let everyone be aware of the progress you're making and some of the barriers that you're knocking down through this process. To create a solid business case, there's a couple different things you want to take from this. First, you want to conduct an ROI and TCO analysis. So this is not simple, and there's many hidden costs when doing this. So we kind of group to three buckets. We group things into a pre-migration, migration, and post-migration. So with pre-migration, you'll have data center costs like real estate and cooling and electricity and storage and network. You'll have infrastructure costs like hardware, compute, memory, refresh cycles that come up, maintenance of your infrastructure and how they maintain it over time. Software costs, you'll have licenses, support contracts, and you have operations costs. So, the labor of operations, you might have contractors come in to help. You might have different contracts with different companies for different parts of operations. You might have, your system updates and historically your patching, keeping up with those updates and patching. the operations, essentially, those affect the operations costs. So that's like the group of pre-migration that you can help with understanding the benefits post, pre, and going to the cloud. Then you have your migration. So infrastructure and platform build out. So when you go and do your migration, you need to go and build out your infrastructure and your platform and your landing zone in the cloud. So the migration, cost of building out that infrastructure, your cloud landing zone, your CI/CD automation. Then you have your application costs. So depending on how you look at the 7 R's, really like of migration, you're taking a look at, well, are you retiring? Are you rehosting? Are you replatforming? Are you refactoring, relocating? So how you decide to, change your application or implement it in the cloud, there's costs to doing that. And obviously the more you modernize, the more cost up front you'll get in refactoring, but the benefits over time, you have gains there. So you want to evaluate that. Then personnel costs. So like I mentioned before, there's upskilling and training. You might have, maybe to start, you want to bring consultants in to help you get started and have your team work alongside. You're going to hire. So there's a cost of hiring, there's a cost of retention, and so forth. So those are those migration costs. Then there's post-migration costs. So we work very closely, for example, with our partners at AWS to help, and really all of our partners of Azure and GCP to really help understand post-migration costs. And this is where you look at operations. So now you're on the cloud, you're going to have the infrastructure costs, your platform costs. It's a pay-as-you-go model, but you can eliminate licensing. You can, maintenance and patching is a different world in a cloud-native landscape. You're rebuilding infrastructure every time. You don't need to go into existing infrastructure and necessarily patch it. There's different solutions to how you do that. There are different ways to achieve that, but all that is cost. There's, again, the personnel of after migration. So staying trained. Cloud is a very advanced topic, but it's also growing at an exponential rate. So if you just look at AWS, for example, and the reInvent, every service they come out with, there's so much there that to stay trained and up to date, it's, you have to continue your training and continue your understanding of how the different features of the cloud come out. And that's important from a training perspective, as well as just, again, from retaining the cloud talent. So all of these really help to, if you look at these and understand these, and you can show how they're impacted pre, during, and post, you can start to build your return on investments or total cost of ownership. The business case is on top of that also has many other variables. So as if you're migrating one product, a cluster of products, or a whole BSS OSS stack, for example, there are different variables that come into play. And like I mentioned before, the method of what you choose to migrate also impacts your costs. So some companies might have a data center evacuation. We're going to shut all of our data centers and we're going to move over. That is a certain decision by leadership that you might want to take. You don't have the opportunity to refactor every single application to a cloud native architecture. You might, lift and shift some, you might replatform some and move them. All of those you want to take into consideration to understand that the business case of moving to the cloud is one thing, but once you're on the cloud, continuously modernizing is extremely important to manage your costs. And you want to show how it doesn't end when you just go to the cloud. It continues to go, and you want to look at essentially your business value for your applications, as well as how much you want to modernize that application for whatever reason. You want to show some of the intangible benefits. You want to show staff productivity and business agility. So remember, just by if you spend $10 on premise and then you move to the cloud and you spend 20, it doesn't mean you're spending more money. You might be gaining more revenue. You might be pushing more products out more faster. You might have better business agility. So you can't just factor in like a cost of before and a cost after. You have to look at other factors as well of doing that migration, because productivity of moving fast, eliminating work in progress, pushing releases faster, automating, and so forth brings value to your customer quicker, drives revenue, and that delta is extremely important to understand. So take that into account when you're going through this process. And then beyond the pure financial cases that I've been talking about, migrating to the cloud has obviously many more benefits you want to highlight. So you want to and focus on the increased innovation, like I mentioned, the employee satisfaction, the rapid development cycles. It's hard to put a dollar amount on that, but to show the value and to pilot it and to show an example, that helps you get to where you want to be. Again, factor in your organization's business and technology priorities. You still want to align with your technology vision, and you want to tie that together. You want to look at your mission and vision, and you want to tie how this migration supports that. You want to articulate those intangible benefits that I mentioned, and together with doing that, having a pilot along with it, and showing how you've evaluated the costs and the intangible benefits before and after. That helps get your leadership on board, and it helps explain that while there are many intangible benefits and there are complexities of this, there is a true ROI and TCO by doing your due diligence and showing that cloud isn't a scary thing. Cloud can really help the organization move to that next level. Different measures of success. Really, we look at Google came out with the DORA, the State of DevOps report, which they call the DORA metrics. The way to measure success, we find it very difficult where out of the 4, arguably 5 indicators, so the DORA metrics are deployment frequency, mean lead time, mean time to restore, and deployment success rate. In our experience as we're going through, it's very difficult to find any other metric, cost you can consider sometimes in there, that doesn't address success. So if you're moving to the cloud and your deployment frequency is accelerating, but while that's also happening, your lead time to production and releases is going down. And on top of that, your mean time to restore in case of any issues is a lot faster. And the deployment success rate is higher. You're not rolling back often. You factor all those in. If those are all healthy, there's a lot of times that you can't find another reason or another metric of not being able to show success. So we look at those DORA metrics and we hold to those. And cost is an indicator you want to look as well. But remember, with all these other metrics and your cost, together you're driving more business, right? And it's extremely important there. And on top of costs, like you want to look at your customer. So if you do all those metrics well, your customer and NPS scores, they're gonna be improved. The customers are going to like that. But you want to monitor it, right? So the NPS is important, and then just operational resiliency. So looking at the operations and what it takes to achieve those. So if you're having all those 4 metrics and they're really good, but it's taking so much of personnel or so forth to do it, you want to look at the resiliency of your operations and automation, and you want to measure that as well for success. From TM Forum, there's kind of 2 main assets I kind of wanted to cover, and one is TM Forum has an open APIs, about 75 API documents, which cover a large portion of telco APIs. Why that's important, it might not be specific to cloud here, but the importance of the open APIs is they are adopted by the industry. A lot of telco and industry partners have moved to the cloud. They're using these standards in the cloud. It's been tested, it's been proven, it's been working. There's a key to looking at these and working with TM Forum and understanding these assets to help understand, one, how to achieve your telco business, but also adopting in the cloud. These APIs have been looked at against cloud. They have been used time and time again in the cloud, so that you can feel confidence in looking at these open APIs, and that can still address your systems and platforms in the cloud landscape. And really, a major one is the TM Forum and TM Forum Open Digital Architecture. So it's been around for about 2 years, but it's got a lot of it's building some traction. And what this really does is this helps organizations understand how to migrate to a cloud native architecture. So it really kind of helps customers transform to digital and standardize their interfaces for control and observability. It's really like a component-based architecture built on Kubernetes, and it talks through the business services of each component, as a set of those open APIs. And why this is important is the benefits of microservices, or the benefits of decomposing your complex application into smaller pieces, is extremely important when moving to the cloud. The benefits of the cloud really enable you to go fast and be lean, and also use infrastructure in immutable ways, and like I said, fail fast, drive innovation, and so forth. This framework helps you understand how you could take that journey to modernizing to a cloud native architecture. And by going to a cloud native architecture, that helps you really leverage the benefits of the cloud to optimize cost, optimize scalability, optimize everything you do in the cloud. And it's a guide, again, that has been worked with various telcos, including Amdocs, to understand what is the best way to go to a cloud native architecture. And this is a set of practices and a framework to help you go through that. So there'll be some articles and so forth on TM Forum site to read more about it.